welcome to another episode of P&MQ. Today we have a special guest, our other junior pitmaster, Collins Renee, up from New York, visiting us. We're going to make pizza dough tonight. We're going to make a Neapolitan style pizza with tomato, basil, and mozzarella. This is our general recipe for just general purpose pizza dough. We do have a pizza oven on order. It's coming in. There's the pizza oven that's circling around the camera right now. It should be here at the end of March, so we'll do another recipe on that. And we'll also have some different flour at that time. Deal's here to say hi. So we're going to start off with the water. The water is straight out of the tap. We have 600 grams of just tap water. It is bath temperature because by the
600 grams. Okay, for people who actually speak normal English and don't cook all the time, what is that?
So you have to get a scale, number one, and you have to weigh it out in weight, not volume, because volume doesn't matter. So the volume on this is 2 and almost 3/4 cups, but we don't pay attention to volume when we come to baking. So we're going to put 600 grams of water in. And to that, we're going to add what?
We're going to add some of the yeast.
Salt first, but good guess.
Yeah.
So go ahead and dump the salt in. So we got 20 grams of kosher salt. It's coarse grain. It doesn't matter because we're going to take a fork. My other junior pit master is going to help me whisk it up. Put it outside. There you go. Dissolve all that salt. So the pizza dough recipe has 1, 2, 3, 4 ingredients. Here, let me help you a little bit. Idiots. Okay, you whisk that, and I'll talk about the yeast for a little bit. So we're going to use this rapid rise Fleischmann's instant yeast. We're going to do a 2 rise to the pizza dough. First is going to be as a whole. Second is going to be as the individual balls that we're going to make, about 7.5 to 8 ounces apiece. Desiree has decided to make the weather absolutely ridiculous today, so we're not going to cook on the pit boss or any apparatus outside as far as that's concerned, because it's, how cold is it out?
It's like 4 degrees.
It's 4 degrees and it's snowing out, so that's miserable, and I don't feel like paying a massive fuel bill. So I've got just 1 packet to the 600 grams and 20 grams of salt. Go ahead and pour it in. Make sure you get it all in, shake it out. So we're going to put this yeast in here.
Oh boy. Come here.
That's good.
Now, do you want me to mix it?
Yep, we can mix it. Get all them clumps out. So while she's mixing this and getting all the clumps, get all the clumps from the side. Good. We're going to talk about the flour. Today we're using all-purpose flour, and I have 900 grams of all-purpose flour. Once again, Melissa, scaled out. This recipe that I have is almost exact in the fact that you don't really need to add anything else to it. You just measure it out in weight, and it'll make you some good pizza dough. Depending on the humidity, depending on the time of year, you might have to add a little bit more flour or not add any flour at all. But today we'll probably only have to add just a little bit of flour for sprinkling on the surface as we roll it out. I got it. Let me see for just a little bit. Pretty good.
It smells weird.
Oh no, it smells like fresh bread, doesn't it?
Kinda.
So that yeast, we want it to get all dissolved, and Collins has done a pretty good job on getting it all broken down. And if you don't get it all, it's not a big deal because this is going to set for 2 different rises. Well, Leah's going to help now. We'll put the fork right there so we don't make some stains on our tablecloth. Diesel is making sure that no one falls asleep. So one of the tricks to this, I'm going to move it kind of away from Collins just to show you. I've got my water mixture with the salt and the yeast in there. I'm going to add just a little bit at a time. And this is where Collins is going to help me in just a little bit. This table is not good for making dough whatsoever. You can see how I can start to incorporate all that. You're going to get messy. We're going to make kind of like a slurry, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when you feed me flour, you're going to have to be careful not to drop any of that, because remember I said weight is important, not volume. The dog's making sure that our floor here doesn't last too long. He's just going to wear it out with his nails. He's just as mangy as they come, isn't he? Okay, add me just a little bit more. We don't have an electric mixer. No, tip it right up. Get it in there. There we go. About half of it. That's okay. We lost a little bit. We'll come back from it.
Yeah.
So we're just going to mix this up. Get it all incorporated. Okay, so we transfer it into the kitchen because I need to knead this on the countertop. I've got a fork here that I use to kind of whisk all that salt and yeast into the bowl. I'm going to get it scraped out of the bowl and onto the countertop. And what's our goal here, Collins?
Our goal is to make it not sticky.
Right.
We want it to stay to itself.
Stay to itself. So
we don't want it to stick to anything else because then we won't have the right amount to make a pizza.
Right.
It'll be too much.
Too much moisture, right?
Yeah.
So it's sticking to my hands right now. Is that too much?
Yeah.
Good call. So you're going to take a little bit of flour. Once again, AP flour, all-purpose flour, just a little bit. That's way too much. Just a little bit. You're going to put it on my hands. Good. That's plenty. I'm going to use this flour to kind of get some of that dough off my hands. A little goes a long way after you've already measured all this out. Now, we made this on the tabletop in the dining room, so we lost a little bit. It's not a big deal, but our ratio's off a little bit. So I'm going to get this all cleaned off my hands because all this is going to mix in. I've got my scraper handy, just in case. Hopefully we don't have to use it. I'm going to incorporate all this into the dough, and we're going to knead this. I'm going to try and make it all into one nice mixed dough ball.
And we don't want it to stick because that won't be good.
Yep, but as you knead it, it's going to start to get a little more sticky, but that's okay as long as it doesn't fully stick to the countertop. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
You can see I've got a little bit of trailings left behind. And after it rises for a little bit, it'll become even more tacky, which is what we're looking for. This ratio of 900 to 600 is almost a foolproof method. So I'm just going to keep working it until I get all these pieces worked in. You can see how I'm not spreading any more flour on the surface, and it's not sticking to the surface.
There's a piece there.
That's okay, it'll work in. I can still feel the little pieces of the flour that we mixed in. That's okay, because we're going to need this for a while.
For quite a bit.
Yeah, at least 6 minutes. Does this make good pizza?
Yeah, it always does. My dad's the best chef in the world, just to let you know.
Thanks,
Sorry, I
Dave.
don't know if you heard me yelling.
So, I'm just grabbing my leading edge, bringing it towards me, and rolling it out. This is going to start to incorporate all those dried pieces. And it's going to stretch the dough out. It's going to open up that gluten in the flour. Is all-purpose flour the best flour to use? No, it is not. But it's going to work for us, and it's worked for us for a couple years now.
So, when you mix it, how do you know when it's ready?
Well, I'm not going to feel any chunks in it, and we're going to kind of set a timer. So it's 4:26 right now. We're going to mix it for about 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
And it's not mixing, it is
Kneading.
kneading.
Yeah.
Good.
Like what a cat does.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got it good and smooth here. I don't feel any inconsistencies in the dough whatsoever. I just keep folding it over. Notice how it's not sticking to the countertop, but it's also not dry. It's kind of maintaining its own shape. And we're gonna kind of tighten it up into a nice ball. We're gonna put it into this bowl.
So, do you put anything in the bowl to keep it moist or do anything with the bowl?
Well, we put a little bit of spray veggie oil in there so we make sure that it doesn't stick. Now we're gonna let this dough double in size. How do we know?
How do we know when it's done?
Exactly. That's a good question. There's many good questions out in the world, and this is a great question. We know it's doubled when it's doubled. So when it's more than twice its size, that's when we know it's doubled. Each dough takes a different amount of time because of temperature, because of the yeast, because of the flour, because of the water. There's a lot involved. So you should, when it comes to cooking,
Oh, sorry.
minor disaster in the background. When it comes to cooking, you shouldn't always set your stopwatch to something that takes time. We're just going to kind of keep an eye on it. It's probably going to take about an hour and a half to double the size. Yeah, but we're not going to get wrapped up around an hour and a half. If it isn't doubled in size at an hour and a half, we're going to let it go a little further. Okay. So we're going to cover this up with plastic wrap because we want to maintain all that moisture in there. And we're going to come back when it's doubled in size. Right, kid? Okay. Stay tuned. Okay, our dough has at least doubled in size. You can see it was about at the first line before we started. It's above the second line. I'm going to get just a little bit of flour on my hands. And what are we going to do now, Collins?
We are going to take it out, and what we are going to do is we're going to take it to, so how much are we going to weigh it to actually? We're going to weigh it and then put it in here and then let it rise a second time.
Yep, we're going to make it to 7.5 ounces a piece. So we've already got a plate on there so we don't put raw dough on the scale itself. I'm going to measure out the first one and then you're going to measure it from there. So we're just going to cut some pieces off.
To
7.5 is what we're going to look for.
Okay.
Just a little bit more. Sometimes this works really good for me. Sometimes I absolutely suck at it. One or the other. Okay, 7.55. That's all right. Okay. So I'm just taking the dough and I'm folding it back in on itself to tighten up that surface to create a nice tight ball. Collins is getting me 7.5 ounces. Remember, just cut it, don't scrape it. Yeah. Once I get a nice tight ball, I'm going to place it in another greased pan to rest and kind of set.
So what grease are you using?
I'm just using some more of that spray veggie oil.
Okay. That's good.
That's good. They don't have to be completely exact, but the closer the better. Once again, just folding it in there. If you have a good dough, you shouldn't need any flour on your hands. It shouldn't stick to you. It should be just a nice consistency. Yeah, that's a good word. Kind of like Play-Doh almost. Once you get it all nice and tight, put it in the pan.
Just very sticky.
So we ended up with 2, 4, 6. We ended up with 7 of them. Some of them are a little over 7.5 ounces.
Oh boy, Leah's grabbing the stand.
But we're right around 7.5 ounces, so that recipe should give you 7 dough balls at just around 7.5 ounces. We're gonna let them rest for, it's probably gonna be about half hour, 45 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna prep our tomatoes. We're gonna cut them up. We're gonna prep our basil. Pretty much gonna prep everything. We're also gonna put our stone in the oven. Remember I said it's ridiculously cold out, so we're not gonna do it on the grill at all outside or the pizza oven that's also on back order. We're gonna do it in the oven, which is gonna heat the house up and be nice.
So how many degrees do you have to put it to? Like how?
The oven?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So we're gonna put the oven at 450. That's what we've learned is about right. A lot of people run it at 500, which is just fine, but we found that with this recipe, with a lot of moisture in it, we don't want it to cook too fast, the moisture, because of all the tomato and the fresh mozzarella. We don't want it to burn the bottom first, so we're gonna run it at 450. Okay, let's start assembling this pizza. So first off, we can flour our hands a little bit. We don't need much. This dough has risen a little bit. You can see it was some pretty small balls when we put it in there, and it is almost doubled in size. It'll finish rising in the oven if the plastic wrap sticks to it, as it is right now, of course. We're just gonna be really careful.
So how long did you really let it sit for? What would be the main priority would you let it sit for?
Well, that's a good question. So we let it set for probably about, what, an hour and a half? We went outside, did some donuts with a four-wheeler.
About 2 hours.
Yeah. I'm gonna grab a little bit of cornmeal, spread it on my pizza peel. Where do you get these pizza peels?
You make them.
Exactly, I made this one. So, how we handle the pizza dough is kind of important. I put it on here first. Don't be afraid to go over on the flour and the cornmeal. I already put some cornmeal down. I'm gonna put a little bit more flour down. Keep it on my fingers until you get the right ratio. I'm gonna start working it out, pressing it out. And as I start to make a disc, I'm gonna start working it with my hands. Now, Collins has been begging to help with this, but there really isn't much you can do as far as a second person. I'm gonna start just working this by myself, stretching it out. Now, we know we got a good ratio on our water to flour because this is a pretty resilient crust, and I can just keep working it until I get a uniform thickness. I'm looking for a pretty thin crust. It's gonna be pretty elastic, so it'll come back together as I put it back on the peel. If I got some thicker parts, I can work it back out a little bit. Now this is like I said, this is our general pizza crust. Once I get it worked out a little bit, I'm going to start assembling the pizza.
I'm sorry, I just have to show you guys what she's doing underneath the table.
Just
She's
complete pandemonium around this.
dragging her diaper bag
There's
around.
not a single thing that happens all day until we want to shoot a video, and then the dog's ticking, just wearing holes in the hardwood. I'm going to declaw him tonight, more than likely. No, I'm not going to. Don't hand me up for that.
He always kids.
I'm going to start with my tomatoes. These are Roma tomatoes. They're really special. We got them from a really good location, Walmart.
What's it chewing on?
I'm going to spread them out pretty thick. This is going to be the main part to this recipe is the tomatoes, because these are going to cook down. The oven's been preheating for, probably about a half hour, babe. Mm-hmm. I got some tomatoes. I'm going to
come in a little closer so you guys
That's
can
probably
see.
about a half a tomato, I would say, on there if you were trying to guess how much. I'm going to put a little basil on here. Normally we put fresh basil. This has been fresh basil that we have dehydrated, and we're going to put back on here.
No.
I'm going to put a little bit of garlic salt. Don't be afraid to go heavy on it.
Never afraid.
Black pepper.
No. You gotta be afraid of that one. A little too much pepper makes it go season.
Yeah, you can go too heavy on the pepper. We're going to put some just regular extra virgin olive oil. Just around to that.
Don't go too heavy on the oil.
And then we're going to go with some mozzarella. We like to use the mozzarella pearls, fresh mozzarella pearls.
Turn it a little more. Yes, and then
If
show
you-
them the package.
Yeah.
No, turn it around. Pearls. There.
If you have the availability to legit fresh mozzarella, hats off to you. We do not, where P&MQ is located right now. I'm going to put a generous amount of this on as well. This is going to cook down. How much do you put on? Yes, that's how much you put on. We don't want to over top the pizza. If you put too much on, it won't cook right.
No, it looks good.
Yeah, it does. It'll eat. So that's about what we're looking for. Now, in closing, before we put it in the oven, I'm going to put just a little bit of flour right here. Excuse me. COVID. Because this is the first one that's going to go in the oven, I'm going to make sure that I've got plenty of flour around it, so when I put it on the stone that's been preheating for over a half hour, we don't have any hang-ups. You want to follow me into the stone?
I suppose I can do that.
Okay, so once again, pizza's stone is hot. We're going to pull it out just to give you kind of a display of it. So work that flour.
Thank you.
And we're going to slip it on.
And I'm going to come in here and show you guys what this looks like.
What do you set the oven to?
450, we already talked about that. There we go. Okay, it's been about 8 to 10 minutes. I've rotated it a couple times. The first one is always kind of a toss-up. Look at that. We got some good color. All the cheese is melted.
Really good.
Got a lot of moisture there, but we're going to put it on this wire rack so it can cool down on its own and not really make any moisture from the bottom of the crust, which will make it soggy.
Oh, sorry, the flour's in the way.
That's okay.
Look how pretty they are.
So while it is cooling down, we'll talk about it a little bit. So I let it cook for about 10 minutes and I rotated it about twice throughout the cook. I have some balsamic glaze, which is balsamic vinegar with just like a pinch of sugar in it, and you cook it down, render it down for just a little bit until it gets thick. I'm gonna drizzle just a little bit on there. Melissa, this is her favorite part of this pizza, isn't it?
Yes.
In fact,
we could put the whole thing on there and I would just devour it.
We ran a little thin on it, so
I don't know why it keeps shutting off my video.
we ran a little thin on it. This is where you need to spend a little bit of money. So we got the fresh mozzarella. We also got the fresh Parmesan with a grater. We're going to put this on while it's fresh out of the oven. Let that melt in. This is important. If you're going to put fresh basil on, now would be the time as well. But once again, Walmart shorted us and we don't have any fresh mozzarella. So, I'm sorry, fresh basil. So there's the finished product.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to cut it apart. We're going to eat it. We'll save you us stuff in our face, but I promise you it's good. This is a staple in the P&MQ household.